Welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast with your host, Mike Miller. In these sessions, we get to meet up close and personal with the best and the brightest technology leaders and executives in Southern California. We learn about their backgrounds, their business models, and their challenges. We learn about their goals and what makes them tick. Hope you enjoy. In this Boardroom Sessions podcast, we meet David Dowsett, Global Head of Technology Strategy, Digital Transformation, Emerging Technology at Invesco. He's essentially the CTO. One of the smartest guys I've ever met. His job is to research and plan for the next big thing. We talk about so many things, including AI, how to build or buy or partner, microfunding, crowdfunding, and other cool new business models. Hope you enjoy. Dave Dowsett, welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast.
Thanks, Mike, for having me.
Good. So, Dave, you're a guy from South Africa, lived in London.
Absolutely.
Live in Atlanta, Georgia today, and you work at Invesco, right? You are the global head of digital transformation and strategy. That's quite a title. But effectively, you're the CTO at Invesco. And tell us what the business model is at Invesco for those that don't know who Invesco is.
Thanks, Mike. So we are a fairly large asset manager. We manage about $1 trillion of clients' money, and we invest that across a range of services around the world. We're an organization of about 7,000 people, surplus of 20 countries, and about 28 to 30 offices. That's pretty much how Invesco is around the world. And the idea is that we serve predominantly institutional clients.
Okay, so institutions, meaning investors, investment companies, take their money into your funds and look to make money.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you have to build funds and make them profitable in order to attract new customers.
Yes.
And you have $1 trillion right now in assets that you're managing.
That's correct.
That's
big number.
Big number. That sure is a big number. And so you in particular have a couple roles in which you serve the company there in that wordy title. And I actually shortened the title. If I looked at LinkedIn, it's even bigger. And so if you break it down, the way you broke it down to me is that there's two actual roles that you have. One in which is a capabilities analysis. So you look at your company and you look at the departments within your company, and you have business analysts you call BAs.
Yeah.
And these BAs go out into the business units in your company, and they look to find out what's working and what they're doing well, and look to what's not working so well, and find out how you can go about any idea possible helping that business unit to perform better.
Absolutely.
Right? So walk us through that.
So, as you say, we have business analysts. They sit around the world. The idea is from a technology perspective, we want to go and listen to the business. We want to understand the challenges they are having today from a capability perspective. We don't want to hear, I need a server or I need a database. What we want to hear is, these are my problems and these are the capability shortfalls that I have. And the idea for us is that we take those away, look at them holistically around the world, and look at where we might be able to solve small problems, but naturally where these bubble up to be global, enterprise-wide problems. Mm-hmm. And the idea from that is that we want to analyze those gaps, but then we want to take it to the next level and look at from what our competitors are doing to solve those gaps.
So market intelligence, right?
Yeah. So for us, we want to see what competitors are doing, so how they might get a competitive advantage if we don't solve those, or what they might not have seen yet if we don't see them solving them, but we see them having that problem.
So how do you find out information on your competitors? I mean, that's the first natural question that would come up here would be, everyone's guarded on their secrets of how they're making money. So tell me what your BAs do to find out competitive intelligence.
There's a number of ways that we do this. Naturally, we go out and look at market chatter is one. It's amazing how much people do talk about what they are doing out in the industry and what they're trying to do with newer technologies such as emerging tech. We go and look at what VC activity is happening. We want to see what the VCs are investing in, where they're taking the big bets, because naturally that reverse engineers what our competitors are doing.
And that's public information? You can find out where venture capital is putting their money?
Absolutely. And it's amazing as well. You know, I look at disruptive technology a lot. There's a lot of startups now that are providing that kind of heat map analysis of what people are talking about and the sentiment of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So there's actual tools out there for you to buy and use as a service that shows you where the money's going.
Absolutely. You want to see who's talking about what the sentiment of that is, and what kind of money is changing hands, and you can get a picture of really where things are moving and what you should be focusing on.
So once you have that strategic information on your competitors and what they're doing to solve the problem that you've identified within your organization that you're trying to solve for, then what?
So we like to move to the next phase, which we call scenario planning. It's kind of the what if kind of game. What we want to do is understand our top of house priorities as an organization. We want to understand the capability gaps we have. We want to kind of take it to the next level. You don't want to just do what your competitors are doing to solve their problems. You want to kind of look at, well, we're assuming we can't do these things for these reasons. Let's think about this. What about having, for example, if we only have a fixed amount of funds, but there's far more humans on Earth, what about if we could have a fund per human? And straight away people would go, well, that's just not economically possible.
Yeah, break that down for us. So there's how many billion people today?
It's about 7 billion.
7 billion people. So the thought would be, we can't possibly have a fund for every person. And so you're the why not guy. You say, why not?
Yeah, so if you think about this, as an organization, you'll have a fixed amount of funds because economics come into play. And so the idea of where the world's moving to with client experience being front and center, you want to make sure that if your client wants a bigger portfolio to choose from, you can offer it to them. But of course, with margins shrinking, you want to be more effective at offering those. So they kind of compete against each other. But we have to challenge that assumption. We have to go, it can't be a world where we're going to offer less funds. It just can't be that way. What we have to do is think, how can we economically scale? And so we'll start looking at the marketplace to see our competitors doing something in that area. Are there startups starting to chat about this? We'll look at these tools to scour the marketplace.
We're going to talk about a couple of those models here in this podcast, but there are definitely some models outside of creating a fund that could drive plenty more investment, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely. Okay, so you start planning some of these scenarios that are there, and you start the thought process. And so we've had this conversation over several different days, and it sounds to me like you consistently ask the same question of why not.
Yeah.
You have creative thinking in this process. You were telling me about an idea that you had to sell to an executive team, right, around blockchain. Why don't you explain that story? Because it does a really good job of how you break up this thought process that most people have around certain ideas, where it's just a preconceived idea that we can't do that, or that's not able to be done.
We had a capability gap that was identified, that cost of entry to an investment opportunity was at a certain level, and you couldn't get below that. So it was a target audience we couldn't serve. Our strategic intelligence was telling us that competitors are starting to solve that by something with blockchain. And if we could use blockchain and assetize our portfolio, we could allow it to, we could offer a lower cost of entry onto the investment fund. And so what we did is we went and spoke to the business and said, look, this is what we think we can do. And the first response was, I don't really understand that technology.
Blockchain's complicated. I don't want to hear about it.
Absolutely. So the idea was, we'll teach you. We'll take you through 101 lessons. We'll take you from the ground up what this stuff is and what that really means to you.
First objection down, right? So
Absolutely.
What's next? What's the next level that the executive is going to hit you with?
They're going to say, it sounds expensive.
Yeah.
And so the answer is, look, I own the prototype shop to ultimately get us into production, to solve your current challenges that you have. I'll build you a prototype for free.
So you have a shop that would actually build a micro environment of that product or service you're talking about. And so you took away, don't worry about blockchain. It's not too complicated. I've got it covered. 2, it's not going to cost you anything because I've got an environment where I'll stand it up, right? At least for you to test it out.
And then the other one was, it sounds like it's going to take a long time. This sounds really complex. And so the answer is, I'll build you something in a month. It'll be scrappy. Don't judge me on it, but you'll get an idea of what this looks and feels like. And together we'll be able to work the business processes through this engine that we've built for you to see if this actually makes sense. And then we can talk about next steps.
Wow. So what an opportunity for the company to have somebody in the business who's looking to find out where the gaps are, who has a team of BAs that are business analysts that are out there trying to solve these problems. You're coming to the business and selling the ideas to the executives, overcoming their objections with your own team, with your own services and your own prototypes and abilities. That's fantastic. I know that there's going to be some listeners listening here that wish they had that in their companies, had that kind of budget and forethought and team. So how fortunate for Invesco to have you and your team.
Thank you. We want to make sure that we make decisions based on data. We don't want to make decisions.
Data-driven decisions.
Absolutely. It's not about emotion or hierarchy that makes the decisions. We're in an organization that has to run very lean, and we want to make sure we have the facts, and we have them through this process. But what's important is it doesn't end there, because from there, as I said, we have labs around the world. We have developers. We have data scientists. We have data engineers. Our goal is to take that data and build product. It doesn't just end with the theory. And we want to make sure that we are building product for solutions that take us into production and give us competitive advantage.
Okay. And so walk us through some of that. Like, give us an example of where a prototype hit. We had a conversation earlier that we should bring the folks up aware of. There's a difference between looking to the market for often what I do in my business, which is bring solutions that are out there that are already available in the marketplace, vet the right solutions for the client, for their need, and bring those to the table. That works for you sometimes, but a lot of the time what you're talking about is complete creation of a new process, a new product, a new thought, a new idea. And you actually go from zero to hero in development, and you're not a software company. You're not a hardware company. You're just coming in it with, we have a problem, we're going to solve it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's three principles you go. You're either going to build, you're going to partner, or you're going to buy. And so when we find a challenge, what we want to see is, if we acquire, are we going to solve this problem faster? And is it going to give us a competitive edge? Or is it going to make more sense to build, and will we get competitive edge? But the whole purpose is to get that competitive advantage. But naturally, you need to operate at speed. So these solutions can be something really simple. Someone just needs to solve 30 minutes of each of their team members' time per day. Across 100 people, it's a lot of money.
So they need to solve a time problem, right? We need to make our employees more productive by 30 minutes a day.
Yeah, in our industry as well, like with pretty much every industry, it's about data, and it's consuming that data and making intelligence from that data and trying to drive competitive advantage. And so if you can save someone 30 minutes a day just interpreting that data or gathering that data or making sense of that data, there's a gain, because you could free them up to do something else.
So that was actually one of the challenges that your BAs came up with, was if we could improve productivity for some of these high thought process and intelligent folks that are making decisions around funds, there's got cost to that, right? So 30 minutes a day. What were some of the ideas thrown on the table for helping that 30 minutes a day?
So, for example, there's kind of two examples that come to mind. One was research, making sense of information that is coming in, or taking it to the next level is making sense of that knowledge that's coming in, compiling it into forms of reports that can be discussed. And so what we found is that when we went to speak to the business, they were having to manually collate this data. They were coming in the morning, scouring many news sources, collating this data, forming it into reports, going into rooms and discussing that data that they had found. When we took that challenge and we looked at our strategic intelligence, we found a number of startups that are based on AI that will do that for you.
Okay.
You point them at the feeds, you tell them the type of reporting you want it to generate, and then you can bring that information and put it in front of people.
So AI, artificial intelligence, right?
Absolutely.
Machines doing the work, right? Browsing through it. So you're using the machines to do the analyst's work. How do you worry about the fact that some of that data could be inaccurately read or misrepresented?
So we always believe as an organization that the machines won't replace the humans. They will augment the humans. They will help us do better jobs. So we'll always use humans as quality gates to make sure that what we are researching still makes sense and is still true. But what it does is, if you can free up those amount of cycles from those amount of people, getting them to just do the quality check at the end is very, very small effort.
Yeah. And so AI is a big buzzword right now. So you also lobbed blockchain. Right?
Yeah.
So that's another big buzzword. But AI is one right now in which there's a lot of machine learning going on. And for the folks that aren't so technical listening on the call here or on the podcast today, well, AI is used in chat bots. So if you've ever been on a website and you've ever opened up a web page and had a chat window open up and say, hey, would you like to chat with us right now? That's AI. That's artificial intelligence right there greeting you. And the first couple of line conversations that you have with those folks is actually you talking to a computer. So that's AI. AI also does Siri or Amazon when you talk to Alexa or any of those. Those are all AI. That's a computer looking for a search window for you, right?
Yeah, forms of AI. Yeah,
those are forms of AI. And so you're dealing with it on a completely different scale where you're working through data lakes and things of that nature, right?
Yeah, for us, the more we can ensure the quality of data is high, the more central we can have it, the more we can mine it and make sense of it. And so that's a goal that we've always got to make sure that we're doing.
Okay. So let's get back to the prototypes, right?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of folks listening to this podcast here that would love the opportunity to create and play in a lab environment from scratch. So that's a toy. That's like having a toy box for some of these folks. So walk me through what your toy box looks like and how is your process, and do you have full complete standards, or do you have young people that just are throwing anything at the wall like a startup? Walk me through that.
So what we found we have to do is we have to have really a combination of resources that have been in our organization for a very long time and truly understand it. But we also need a dynamic of fresh blood coming into the organization that probably don't understand our business as much. And what we want to do is give both freedom to think about things, but we want one kind of team to be pushing the boundary and the other one to be thinking about the enterprise and how the two work together. Where we find a lot of success is that finding talent is hard. So sometimes you have to go to the talent. So we do a pop-up lab where the talent demographic is, and we might not have an office. It's actually cheaper to do that.
Okay. And so you find that on an individual or a couple individuals, or?
Yeah, so for skill sets, for example, data science is hard to find. Blockchain expertise is hard to find. Sometimes they won't come to you. You've got to go to them.
Yeah.
And so you want to just pop up a lab in an environment, 30 seaters, with a bunch of other companies that have the same goal as you. You create an ecosystem where they can come to a different place of work in a different type of environment than you normally have in a different location. And the goal is to do different things.
Yeah.
And you leave them alone off-prem to go and be creative. And they will build product and ideas working with the business that we think is something that we can drive into production as something that's going to be innovative and give us competitive edge.
And so those are individuals that wouldn't necessarily work very well in Atlanta in corporate office, where there's suits and big cars driving in and out and people working all day. These are folks that are more of the startup mentality, right?
Absolutely.
The younger, pioneering kids that grew up with headphones on and laptops in their lap, right?
Yeah, if you want to attract that next generation, you've got to give them an environment that they want to work in. But you still have to respect individuals that have a ton of experience working in your organization, have given you 20, 30 years, and you don't want to disrupt their work environment. And so I kind of call it a two-speed technology. You kind of allow some types of the organization to do what they do best, but then create an environment for new thinkers to come in and do what they do best. And the two complement each other very well, because a certain type will be thinking forward and another type will be thinking about, well, what if? What about the enterprise? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? But you problem solve together and you find you come up with great product really quick.
Awesome. And so for these folks that are building the prototypes, walk me through, do you use Agile or any kind of these different processes to come up with your products?
Yes, we've got tools and frameworks, but we try not to be too specific. One of the feedback I once got, which I really enjoyed, is I said, so did you use Agile for this? What was your methodology? And they said, we just collaborated. And I was like, well, what were your roles and responsibilities in the deliverable? And they said, whatever was required on the day. And they just work together to deliver code. And it's interesting, when you watch these teams work together, and you give them the right environment to ideate in, they just help each other problem solve.
Right.
It's not about who's the project manager, who's the BA, who's the coder. It's just about, there's the problem, let's just get there and solve it.
And so I have the ability to be in front of a lot of different IT shops on, somewhere in the neighborhood of a dozen or more a week. And I'll tell you, the gamers, some time ago, they're becoming more corporate today.
Yeah.
And they're having a lot more processes today than they had in the past. But in the early days of computer online gaming, I saw some of the massively multiplayer games. Those folks had a very collaborative environment like that. They had these open workplaces. Everyone would sit at a big conference table. They had the headphones on, but they would see each other eye to eye, and they would pull the headphone off to have a conversation and converse. They could flip their laptops around and get to what they needed to get to right there, immediate, real time. And so the concepts we have in the enterprise today of conference calls and meetings on the calendar did not exist there, but things got done at a very rapid format and rapid pace. Hours were all off. They could work whenever, all the time. It looked like all the time. The place was dead in the morning, but it was cranking all afternoon, all evening.
Right, through the evening.
Yeah, through the evening, through the night. So different environment. So that's interesting. What challenges does that represent? For you to have have a look and a lock on that process?
Yeah, the challenges are is that we want to make sure that when an idea or an opportunity comes up from our business partners, that we are going to think about solving it in the freest way. We don't want to immediately start thinking about the constraints of the organization or of the enterprise architecture. So really where our challenge generally becomes is we come up with some great idea, and here's a prototype, how are we going to solve it? But then how do we translate that into an enterprise fix? We've got to respect the enterprise architecture, and we don't want to build up technical debt, but we also want to push the innovation boundary and move the agenda forward. So just bringing the two together is where we find creative conflict, which I'm very happy with. You just got to manage that.
Okay, good. So let's talk a little bit about your BAs.
Yeah.
So you have these business analysts in the business. Their role is to go and sit in a business unit that they don't normally work in every day and evaluate that business unit to find out what they're doing right and what they could use help doing better, right? To summarize, what are the qualities that make up a good business analyst?
So in my team, being in technology, we have to understand the business first. We have to be able to understand how the business works, the value chain across the entire organization, and be able to translate that into technology and vice versa. So the first and foremost thing that I'm looking for in my technology teams are people who understand the company they're working for. I'm not just hiring techies, I'm hiring business people. And what happens from there is that when they can translate a business problem and marry it to a technology solution, they can manage with technology, and they can also talk back to the business and making sure we're keeping the terms right. The business don't want to hear blockchain first. They want to hear I'm going to solve their problem. Technology want to hear what technology I'm going to use to solve that problem.
Right. IT guys love to get into the technology, right?
Absolutely. And so for me, I want to make sure that that is checked first. Second of all, my job is to go and work very big picture with the business and think very big picture how to solve this to get the most competitive advantage we can. So I need to make sure I'm surrounding myself with very detailed thinkers that are making sure that they are catching anything that I'm missing. And I can help pull them along, but they need to pull me back a bit and make sure there's a sanity.
So you're the big picture, creative guy. You were telling me that you had a team at one time that had a lot of you in it. You had a lot of folks that were big thinkers, big picture folks, and you didn't have enough of the execution analytical types, right?
Absolutely. When I first joined, there was a lot more of a focus on strategy and the horizon and how we can change the business. What I needed to do was make sure we had a lot more execution on current problems. And if you can marry the strategy and you can marry current problems with what disruptive technologies are happening, and you have people who are thinking the detail through and can build product, I have builders, not strategists in your team, then you're cranking out the product. So I needed to make sure that I've got people around me that can write code, that are thinking detail, but understand the business to help me do my job best.
How does the business receive a BA's inquiry, if you will? A BA coming into their business to find out what they do well and what they don't do well. Are they open arms, like, come on in, help me out, come find some new tools or a way to make us better?
They're very receptive. However, it gets better over time. You can imagine in the beginning when you do this, time is tight. People want to know why. Normally or traditionally, the business are used to saying, I need some storage, I need a database, I need a server. And now we're saying, tell me your capability challenges that you're having as an organization. So in the beginning, you might find a bit of resistance, but what you find is that as you start delivering results against those gaps, because they might realize that every week they miss this filing and this is the consequence, but they don't know what technology will solve that. They don't know what server compilation will solve that. We do that for them. They must just tell us their problem. And that is something that is quite unique in our organization. They don't have to solve it themselves. We help them. And the more you do that, the more ground you gain. And what we found is start simple, keep it really small, because people are nervous. Sometimes we find in the business, people will think, the problem I have is big, and the technology solutions complex and expensive are going to take a long time. And actually, when you sit back and look at it, you go, no, it's actually pretty simple. I can fix this pretty quick. You just got to make sure you're doing that and you're delivering those. And then the bigger ones come along.
Right. So it's the same challenge that you are overcoming on a regular basis that I hear from my IT executives, in that when they're selling to the executive team, they need to make it business oriented. They need to have a thorough understanding of the business challenge, not the technical challenge, the business challenge you're trying to solve for, and what that technology, it's big, it's scary, it's complicated, it's got these big names around it. Don't worry about that. It's going to work, and I'm going to make it work. Right, and so you have to cover that in your role regularly.
Absolutely. I mean, right up to through C-level, even to board level. What I always tell my team, we're here to make the business better. We're not here to play with the latest technology toys. And so the idea is we've got to make sure we're showing value by what we do, using technology to drive competitive advantage, but it's business first.
That's awesome. So let's shift gears here. The other part of your role, right? So we talked about your capabilities analysis that you do with your BAs to help better the business. Another part of your job is strategy, right? So you're looking at new school, new technology, new things out there on the horizon that could help Invesco make more money, right?
Absolutely.
New revenue streams, if you will, and disruptive technology. And so you and I have had some really cool conversations I can't wait to get out here. And one of which ties back into the why not conversation that you have. So you're challenging your business on a regular basis. Why not be able to do that, or why not do something else? And so one of the new technologies on the horizon that I'm sure you're looking at is micro investing.
Yeah.
So micro investing, for those that don't know, is as simple as having an app on your phone. There's a couple companies that come to mind. I think there's Acorn and there's Stash are two that I'm well aware of. And the thought process is that if you're at Starbucks and you have a couple of seconds, you can put a couple dollars into Stash or what have you. There's even a ability for folks I've heard advertised, like if you get a deal today, like if you get your Starbucks reward, for example, you take that $3 you just saved on your drink and you put it in Stash. It's kind of like micro investing is the term. Yeah. And so you get a chance to save $5, $3 at a time and put it into an investment fund. And when I asked you about this, you said the industry would say?
It's just so heavily regulated as one, but to accept $3 here, $4 there just isn't economically viable.
It's not economically viable. So that would be what the industry would say. And they're going to say today that micro investing for these couple of companies is really hard to make money on. I don't see a future in it. I can just see the guys in the paneled offices with the big glass building saying there's no money in that. Yeah. That's an old technology, right? However, you and I are both well aware. We're well aware of the network effect. And for those of you who haven't read Platform Revolution, which is a plug for a book that I highly recommend, you'll learn the story of Uber and how their early investors in Uber opted out of investing in Uber because they thought the taxi cab market was only so big. Yeah. And that if you're going to disrupt that industry, the industry's only so big that there's not really a lot of money to be made. Even if you were to eliminate taxis, there's not enough money to be made in the market. That being said, they overlooked the network effect. The network effect turned on its head because so many cars became available as drivers through Uber, that so many more people used cars to drive in Uber. It made it easier for them to drive. It created a whole new market called the network effect, okay? So in micro investing, I would say the ease of use of anyone with a phone in their hand be able to add $3 to $5 into an investment firm. If everybody had one and everybody did it every day, for a few cents a day or a few dollars a day, there might now be a market.
Yeah, it also opens a different market. And the idea there is that if you take it back, in our business, we're always looking at new investors and we're always looking at new ways to bring in money into our funds. And so what we've got to do, when I was looking at before, like the capability analysis, we see that as a capability gap and an opportunity. When you look at the strategic intelligence and you start seeing startups forming to do this type of thing like Acorn, you start seeing competitors getting into this space. You can only think for so long it's not viable or you don't want to go after that market. You have to see, we call it paper cuts. You see these things chipping away at you.
Paper cuts.
You're seeing the alarm bells going off. And so the traditionalists might be thinking that's not a business we want to go at, but the signals are telling us it's happening. You can't avoid it. You have to look at it. And so when we look at that, you start thinking, well, it opens a new market. For our type of demographic, it's generally the older market that we go after. The younger market is something we haven't catered to, that our type of business, asset management. But this type opens a new door. And so while it might not even be a vast amount of money per person, to your point, the network effect brings in a large amount of money. But it also brings in your next generation of clients.
Correct.
That as they get older, they will carry on investing with you. What you do to make it more exciting for them as well is that gamification kind of experience that we've seen examples or prototypes of. if someone's getting an Uber and it says, why don't you walk? It's healthier, and save the money and invest it. Or you're at Starbucks and you tell your friend you're at Starbucks, but your friend chooses to rather invest the money. And then from a leadership perspective,
competitive nature, right? All
Absolutely.
of a sudden you're now using Instagram to shame your buddy in your little investment portfolio.
That leaderboard.
Leaderboard, right? It's actually, there's terms for it, right?
Yeah, and what you want to see is that your buddy did $60 this week and you did $0. And we've seen examples where, for example, if someone's, you tied into a health app and your buddy didn't go running this week and someone did, it's that whole gamification experience that you want to say, your friend didn't invest any money, you did, and the money you invested has actually outperformed someone else, so you're better at investing. And people want to see what you did, and they want to follow you, and you make it fun.
Yeah.
But the idea is you need to bring in large amounts of money to make it competitive or make it worthwhile, but you get there through that crowd effect.
That's awesome. And so let's rewind there a bit. You talked about the fact that originally the common thought would be micro investing, there's no money in it, it's hard to manage at a small rates, therefore we're not interested. You talked about how you look at it, and you look at it from a different lens. You look at it from the paper cuts. Like, hey, there are some things we need to be aware of. This could be a new market. This is disruptive. There are things like gamification that are working in other areas that could come into effect here. This might be something we look at, right? You gave me a really good example of paper cuts in a past industry that everybody would relate to. So why don't you tell us about the Netflix model?
Yeah, so some of the paper cuts that they missed, their business model
went Blockbuster, right?
Yeah, it was Blockbuster. But what happened with Netflix is in the year 2000, it's a fact, they turned down buying Netflix for $50 million. And their view was it just won't be a threat. And the reason is they missed the paper cuts, they missed the signals. And what they missed was they were hiding behind the fact that broadband and home internet was expensive. It hadn't reached every area. Mobile and streaming wasn't reliable. It was expensive. It was capped. And their view was streaming just won't take off.
So they felt that there was no market threat from an online delivery method for movies. They thought people are still going to walk into my store and rent a DVD. And by the way, DVD players are getting better today and cheaper, so more are going to be set. And they just looked at it as a big barrier to entry, and they didn't see it, right?
Yeah.
So what were some of those paper cuts they missed?
So paper cuts would have seen home broadband becoming more available. In other words, more areas being connected, homes being built with it. They would have seen the cost lowering. They would have seen caps disappearing. They would have seen speed improving. There's just a paper cut on one area that they would have started seeing signals that are telling them actually streaming is going to become more accessible to people. Obviously, then they're going to start seeing Netflix's revenue streams going up. And that was another area that they need to look at. One of the things that I still look at, and I read this recently, was the head of Microsoft Cloud was saying that when he was building the Netflix streaming model, he went to Blockbuster and said, why aren't you building a streaming model? And their answer was, we don't know. They just weren't seeing this whole ecosystem coming up and the barriers to entry being removed, and eventually was their demise.
Darwinism in the business, right? Adapt or perish, and they didn't see the writing on the wall. So that's interesting. You call those paper cuts, and you look for those when you're doing your research on these different models and products to see, hey, it may not be viable today. Micro-investing might not be a viable model today. However, there are a few paper cuts here that are leading to the fact that we need to pay attention. Another super cool one that we talked about is crowdfunding for real estate, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm passionate about this. I've always wanted to be a REIT owner, right? I wanted to be one of the rich guys with a commercial real estate portfolio. I've had a few buddies that are in the commercial real estate business, and they take half of their income on deals that they do, and they reinvest them together, and they build these little REITs, and all of a sudden they become fat cats. They do really well. And so I invested in a company that's here in Orange County called Rich Uncles. And Rich Uncles does exactly that. For $500 buy-in or more, you can buy into this real estate investment trust. And they send me these cool emails that make me feel like I'm a real estate tycoon, right? They send me these emails every quarter and show me what buildings we've bought, and you're the proud owner of a new building. They do a really good job of marketing that to me. And so the crowdsourcing of multiple people buying into this fund at different levels, that's an interesting new model.
Yeah, and so again, this is again the paper cuts that we watch, because our business does not have the challenge of having a shortfall of funds to invest in real estate. But just because we don't have that challenge in our business to raise the funds to go and buy buildings, and we have many, we need to be aware that this is what competitors are doing, and we need to see an uptick in startups that are going after this, because there is again that demographic that can't afford a large amount of money to invest in a building with us, but there's lots of smaller investors that would want to. And so if we can create a platform and we can let many people give us money, that will open a new opportunity or a new investment window for us to go and buy even more real estate if that challenge comes towards us.
Right. So these are both, in full disclosure, things that you may be looking at and putting into your model of, do we build, do we partner, or do we buy?
Yeah.
Right?
You know, a lot of these things, if you know, it's no secret, we went after the robo-advisory business, which, again, one of our assumptions as a business, which we challenged, was humans can only give financial advice. And that's the traditional way things work. But when you challenge that and you look at the uptake of robo-advisors, so digital wealth managers, you go onto a platform, you choose your risk appetite, length of investment, it has algorithms that match you to appropriate funds.
Right.
The idea from there was, it's going to take too long to build this. Our competitors will pass us, so you buy. And we bought one in Silicon Valley a couple of years ago. We've just made a big acquisition in the UK, a couple $100 million, and there's more on the cards. But the idea in that situation is you buy. But there's other areas where you build, and you just got to make that decision.
Right. And so I've heard Tim Ferriss and others, they have Wealthfront, for example, is advertised on those. That's one of these engines, right? That's a robo-investor,
yes.
is it called?
Robo-advisor.
Robo-advisor, okay. You said there was also, in this conversation you and I had, you said there was also a challenge in that people, when looking at their risk appetite and designing their own portfolio mix, right, that there's a challenge there. That if the questions I was answering, so let's say I'm an investor, I'm going to say how my appetite for risk is. I'm going to put and slide the knob how I want to be. You say that oftentimes people don't know how to react in a real situation. So they think they're going to invest one way, and they think their appetite for risk is one way, but you put them in a situation and you find out different. It's a version of gamification?
Yeah, so it came at us from two areas. We heard from our business partners they would like to gamify an engagement model more to attract a different demographic into our business. And so we started thinking what gamification approaches we could have. However, when you look at what's happening in the industry, it's called social profiling.
Social profiling.
And while people are all panicking because of what they've heard about what big companies are doing with your data, the idea was that your social behavior, even though you might not say something specific or do something that is as specific as you would think, what you like on, what you comment on builds a profile about you.
Your digital footprint. So absolutely. I tell my kids all the time, everything you do on your social media, everything you do on the computer is a digital footprint, and it's going to be there with you forever. And both of them, my younger ones, look at me and they don't care. There's they assume they're not anonymous anymore, and they assume that everything's out there. And they're actually looking for a better buying experience, and a better user experience. They want quicker reaction time, so they're willing to sacrifice what we would consider privacy for a better experience online.
And it's true. I mean, when the Facebook kind of scandal hit, I went and turned off all my data settings, and now my social experience is very poor because they don't know anything about me, and it's not really that dangerous for them to know. To give you a very simple example of what social profiling is, if I'm on Facebook and I like pictures of my friends' dogs, they know I'm an animal lover, and they know the adverts they should probably target at me are towards pets. The more you do that kind of behavior, the more people can figure out about you that you might not realize. Your religion, whether you like pets or not, whether you have kids or not, with what you're commenting on. But the idea for us is that we could ask you, and so we're looking at doing this via a voice engine with something called natural language processing and like a Google chatbot. The idea is we would say to you, are you a high-risk investor? What would you do if the market moved? Do your friends think you're a gambler? Do you invest big? Do you invest low? And then at the end of that, we say, please share your social profile data with us, so your Twitter handle. And from there, we can see how you behave on Twitter, and we can tell you the gap of what you think you are and what your behavior tells us.
Okay, let me get all of that. So you're saying that, first of all, instead of using an online form like everyone hates to fill out, you do it digital. You do it verbally. So you're going to give them an Alexa type experience, a Siri type experience where there's questions asked and you're answering, and then the machine is learning the information. They're going to then go to your social profile, and they're going to go mine it, and they're going to look for information and make assessments based on your behaviors online. And they're going to help make your social or your profile for investing more accurate.
Yeah, I mean, and so for me, I believe voice is the next leap from search. So in other words, it's a new form of search. Going onto a web browser, typing in something is kind of becoming old school.
Yes.
They say Google's going to become like the yellow pages if they don't go full voice. Why have an intranet when you can just ask a question? So for us, what we want to do is ask you questions via voice, which is a chatbot. But the idea is to make you a better investor, for us to understand you better, offer you better products, but also just make sure we're giving you the best advice. Naturally, you have to opt into this. We're not going to do it behind anyone's back. But if we can give you a richer experience, we want to know how you might behave. So say, for example, the stock market crashes. We want to know what you're going to do. We want to know how we can help you more because your social profile tells us.
Right. And some people are going to react very differently if the stock market's taking it up, right?
Yeah.
Some people are going to run for the hills and, hey, sell everything I have right now.
So we want to call them quickly.
Yeah. And then other people are going to say, hey, where's some opportunity in this down market? Where can I double down, right?
Yeah, and so we want to know, do we need to call you to say don't cash out? Or we need to know, can we call you and help you make better decisions?
Okay. So let's keep going on the technologies here that you're looking at. So these are fascinating. So first, let's go back real quick to the Siri, the Google, the talking to machines today. Are you using any of those tools? Are you using Alexa? Are you using Siri? Are you using one of those?
Yeah, so we have a good partnership with Google. The technology we find for mining unstructured data and doing analytics on it is just the best.
Okay.
And so we're doing a lot with the Google Home, the chatbot. And so, for example, we send out fact sheets to our clients every 4 to 6 weeks. That's a PDF. That's stale data. What we're prototyping now is, can you do that via voice? So instead of looking at a big PDF as an investor, can you just ask a question? As soon as we move you to Google Voice, you can see it on your app. You can say, show me my bill, call my investor, schedule a meeting. What is my exposure to this? We want to know that data. Now, you would have figured it out from the fact sheet, but if you can ask a question, it's real-time data. It's no longer stale. So we've digitally transformed an old digital process. But once we hear the questions you're asking, we can run sentiment against that. We can see what's your mood. What time of day were you asking those type of questions? But then we want to run analytics against that and know whether we need to call you. And we can't do that from a fact sheet. We can't do that from a PDF.
And this is being done in your call center today?
So we are doing this. We're looking at this actually when we send out fact sheets to clients, our institutional clients. What we're doing is starting to prototype. Could we give them a Google Home on their desk?
Oh.
And they could just ask us questions via a voice chatbot.
So you are really taking the investment customer care scenario from onboarding a client from the very beginning, getting them very used to using robo technology, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to be talking to a Google Assistant and inputting all of your information. You're going to do data mining on that individual by their social media background and everything from the get-go. That's very interesting.
That's our strategy. Yeah,
That's your strategy.
We're working through that at the moment. Naturally, you need your clients to work with you. You need to make sure you can iron out, the teething problems. But, if you think about it, a robo-advisor is digital by going on and using a slider on a browser. We're saying, no, let's take that to voice.
Yes.
And then let's not leave it with voice. Let's ask you some questions and socially profile that. And then let's mine what you've said.
That's incredible. That's the thought process when all is possible. That's the thought process when why not is asked, right? Why can't we? Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about AI. So we chatted about chatbots, and we've talked about how AI can dive through data mining, through big data sets and find information. But where do you see AI in the near future? Obviously, these robo or these talking engines, these speech engines, speech-enabled engines that are out there are becoming very popular. Where do you see AI here?
So for us, it's making sense of vast amounts of data faster than a human can with no bias.
No bias. I think that's the key here, right?
Bias is big.
So talk to us about bias and what you've experienced at Invesco with folks and thought processes around, we can't do that. There's no money in micro investing, right? That's a bias.
Yeah, I'll give you a different example as well. So if, for example, we're looking at where you invest in real estate, so gentrification, which is an up-and-coming area, there's large amounts of data you have to go through. You have to look at revenues from pretty much from councils. You have to look at parking garage revenue data. You want to look at footprints with photographs.
This isn't what most people do. This is what you do.
Yeah.
This is what a smart guy would do to invest in an area.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, so did you guys get that? He's talking about finding parking garage data of what the parking garage ticket receipts are if they're going on the up. if new business are opening in the neighborhood.
Pay more taxes.
Paying
We
more
want to see
taxes.
foot traffic on public transport. We want to find any form of data source we can, and we want to make sense of that. And we want to predict a move. We want to predict an up-and-coming area. A human will have bias. A human could go, yes, but a machine doesn't do that. The machine goes, the facts are this. We will always use a human to validate that data, but the machines will tell us, look here. And when you think about you apply that globally, we're not just talking about California. You want to know there's a move in Russia in an area you've probably never heard of, but the data is telling you that. And machines can just do that so fast.
So if you find that you're building some production environment internally that's doing this, let's take this analogy around the finding the markets that are booming, finding the real estate market that's booming, because you found that this is a booming city because of the following 10 factors that aren't normally looked at, but you're looking at it. Would you ever consider productizing that service and making it publicly available for anyone to use, and at the risk of having one of your competitors use that?
There's certain things we would, and there's certain things we wouldn't. The initial answer is no, we wouldn't. We don't need to. We want to use it for our
competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What we do find companies do, though, when they do that, is they will resell less features. They keep the prime features for themselves, and whatever they sell to you is not the full suite they're using. So you also need to be mindful of that if you're taking service from them. You're not getting everything.
Okay, yeah. You're getting the watered down version.
Yeah, what they don't want or something else.
Yeah, awesome. And so without at the risk of putting all of our listeners here to sleep, let's talk about the big buzzword. Let's talk about blockchain, right? So blockchain's a big scary word for a lot of folks, and I've been in a couple of debates with folks, and I've found that some folks will debate the topic but not even understand what it really does. So for the layman, what is blockchain? Give us an example so we can understand it.
So for us, for a layman's term, and I'll give you some examples where it really is good, it's blocks of data that are written in sequence that are immutable.
Immutable, meaning unchangeable. Meaning there's a set pattern that doesn't change over time, that a regulatory body, a lawyer, anyone else could change. It's there. It's for time, and it's inevitable that it's everywhere all the time.
Absolutely. And so the idea of that going across many entities is that you have something you can trust that has gone across many parties. For me, a blockchain isn't successful if you're going to try and apply it in-house across your own business. Databases do that. When you go across many external parties, you need to make sure that the data that is written there has not been altered, is trustable, and therefore immutable, that the regulators or auditors could look at and agree with what they say, or they can't argue it. But also what it can do is it can give you speed. Sometimes that reconciliation process across many companies is days, whereas blockchain can do it in minutes, sometimes seconds. And so the idea is you want to make sure that if you're working across 6, 7, 8 people, if not more, those records come together really quick. You can really trust what's been done, and it's digital.
Yep, and it's digital and it's there forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So give us a business model where that would help, a business process that is screaming to be helped.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you one actually just slightly outside of our business because I think it lands the argument very well. For me, blockchain has been hyped for a while, but I do believe now it's coming to roost. It's coming to land. People are already starting to see the value. And before people get a bit psyched up about blockchain, it's just a new technology. It's not some fancy thing that's voodoo. It is just a technology. And what happened was it was a technology that was really looking for a problem. I think the problems have surfaced themselves now and they've caught up. Some ripe areas for blockchain: insurance. Any asset that has a matching piece of paper is ripe for fraud. And so if you think about the diamond industry, when that diamond comes out the ground, it's got a piece of paper. You don't know who mined it. You don't know what it was bought for. You don't know its quality. And every time it changes hands, that's open to fraud. So there's a startup that we know called Everledger. They etch the diamond, and that etch matches a blockchain.
Okay.
And that diamond's entire life is on an immutable record. You will know who mined it. You'll know the value it was. You'll know its quality. You'll know who bought it, who sold it. So insurance companies really like that. Because if it is ever lost or stolen and it's ever found, there's an immutable record.
Real estate.
Anything along those lines. So real estate, when you kind of bring it into our world, you could imagine it works in 2 ways. One, we can carve a building up into what's called tokens. So coin offerings. What we can say is we have this 50-story building in front of us, but instead of selling you percentages, we'll sell you coins, and you can trade those coins. And what that does is it lowers the cost of entry to invest in our buildings. but allows you to trade your investment easier.
Okay.
And so what we can do is tokenize real estate. And that is something our intelligence is telling us is on the up.
Okay. So not just crowdsourcing of real estate, but now you're talking about breaking up that real estate into smaller units called tokens, and then being able to trade those tokens within the real estate.
Absolutely. So you lower your cost of entry, you increase your tradability. What you could do is you could tokenize other things beyond real estate and allow a far more fluid fund. You can say people you could invest 4% in a Van Gogh instead of it having to be one person owns the painting, 10% in the Brooklyn Bridge, and maybe get some revenue back via smart contracts of the tariffs that are generated, and 4% of this building here and 10% of that building here. So we can offer you a far more customized fund that you can get in and out of faster and lower the cost of entry for you to enter because it's cheaper to do on blockchain. And the final benefit is it's immutable. We know everything that happened. So when the auditors come in and go, what is Mike doing? We know. Or what have we done?
It's a benefit, or there are arguments that we're not going to have time to get into here today, is that that's the downfall, or that's the downside of it, is that it never can change, right?
Yeah.
So that there's this permanent living history of things that some people may want to change at some point. And so that's part of it. And that's both the beauty and both the devil in the details, right? And so awesome. That was about the best description of blockchain I've gotten from some many folks that I've heard it from. So what's on the horizon for Dave? Where is Dave going from here?
You know, for me, I've just got a love for AI, for the predictive analytics, for the blockchains of this world in NLP. That's kind of my focus, doubling down on that. I'm just trying to make sure that I continue to try and make sense of the business challenges that come up and keeping abreast of the emerging technology and the pace that happens and trying to marry the two and move things forward. So it keeps me busy and keeps me up.
So what a marriage of a role that you work in and a passion for the technology. You have the ability to affect change within a very large organization that can afford to affect change. You have the resources within that organization to make the change. You have the ability as a company to want to be forward thinking and look at what's new in technology and how do I go find the new shiny toy that may make us more money and how do we look at it. Very refreshing, and how fortunate for you.
I love it. I absolutely do the job I love. I'm really happy.
I'm super grateful that you had the time to come on to the boardroom sessions. I'm thankful that you had an opportunity to come on the panels at the OCTP and at the Digital Transformation Summit.
Thanks for the invites.
No, I'm happy to have you, and appreciate the time here today. It's an honor to have somebody with so much passion around technology that is so deep into it. These are things we like to read about and listen to on podcasts, and you're living in it, understanding the analysis of it, and making decisions around build, partner, or buy some of this super cool technology.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we'll welcome you back at some point here in the near future to catch up on some new technology.
I hope so.
Thanks, Dave, for taking the time.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, Mike here. Hope you liked this boardroom session. Please check back to your future sessions as we're recording a new one every month. If you want to reach out, look for me on LinkedIn or send me a note at mike@sidepath.com. That's Mike at sidepath.com.